Griswold v. Connecticut by Sophia Lee. In the 1960s, there were many states that had laws that restricted the advertising and sale of contraceptives. Some of these states, such as Connecticut and Massachusetts, even prohibited all birth control use. In 1873, Anthony Comstock created the Comstock Law in Connecticut. This law basically prohibited any drug, medicinal article, or instrument for the purpose of conception. Citizens who violated this law were fined not less than $50 or imprisoned not less than 60 days or more than 1 year. In 1961, Estelle Griswold, the executive director of the Planned Parenthood League of Connecticut, and C. Lee Buxton, the chair at Yale University School of Medicine, both decided to open up a birth control clinic in New Haven, Connecticut. They wanted to challenge Connecticut's law regarding birth control. Their clinic provided medical advice, instruction, and information to married people about ways to prevent pregnancies. They would also conduct physical exams on women to prescribe the best contraceptive device for them to use. Griswold was upset by the Connecticut law since it turned women seeking birth control into criminals. The clinic only operated for 10 days, between November 1st to November 10th of 1961. After those 10 days, Griswold and Buxton were both arrested. They were found guilty for violating the state law and each fined $100. This conviction was upheld by the Appellate Division of the Circuit Court and the Connecticut Supreme Court. Griswold then appealed her conviction to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1965. Griswold v. Connecticut basically struck down a law that banned birth control. In a 7-2 decision, the court held that the U.S. Constitution protects marital privacy as a fundamental constitutional right, and therefore contraceptives should be made legal. The court said that the marital privacy right was implied by specific provisions of the Bill of Rights, such as the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. For the Griswold v. Connecticut case, it used a similar approach as Meyer v. Nebraska and Pierce v. Society of Sisters, which established a constitutional right to parental control over child rearing. The court viewed the right to marital privacy's nature as similar to those two cases. The court declared that the Connecticut Comstock Law was unconstitutional as it violated the right to marital privacy. William O. Douglas wrote that the right to marital privacy lies within the penumbra of the Bill of Rights. In a concurring opinion, Justice Goldberg wrote that the right of privacy in marital unions is a personal right, retained by the people within the meaning of the Ninth Amendment. Hugo Black and Porter Stewart both filed dissenting opinions, arguing that the government has the right to invade an individual's privacy unless there is a specific constitutional provision prohibiting such invasion. Justice Black explained that the right to privacy is not found anywhere in the Constitution. Justice Stewart characterized the Connecticut statute as an uncommonly silly law, yet claimed that it was still constitutional. An alternative policy that could have been implemented was that only birth control clinics could have been legalized with available contraceptives, rather than only a person's personal doctor having access to the contraceptives. However, they allowed not only birth control clinics to have contraceptives, but also local pharmacies and stores, which is the Griswold v. Connecticut case. The goal of Griswold v. Connecticut was to give privacy to married couples without any government interference, such as a restriction or ban on birth control. Another goal was to decrease the amount of unplanned pregnancies. Additionally, legalizing birth control allows women to more effectively improve their educational and career outcomes. A way this policy is enforced is that the government is not allowed to interfere with stores that sell contraceptives. Married women who buy birth control will not get fined or arrested anymore. Contraceptives, such as intrauterine devices, diaphragms, and condoms, are regulated as medical devices by the FDA Center for Devices and Radiological Health. The Food and Drug Administration, also known as the FDA, was created in 1906 and is responsible for protecting the public health by ensuring the safety, security of human, veterinarian drugs, and medical devices. Because Griswold v. Connecticut legalizes the use of contraception for married couples, the FDA also approves such drugs and medical devices for the public use. The pill Envoid is the first oral contraceptive that was approved by the FDA for public sale to married couples. It later became known as the morning after pill. Now, let's take a look at governmental and non-governmental influence on Griswold v. Connecticut. A government influence or political obstacle is that the Catholic Church strongly opposed the use of birth control, even within marriage. 66% of the members of a Catholic church opposed birth control, even during the Griswold v. Connecticut case in 1965. Many of the members were stubborn and did not change their views. However, some of the members ended up switching their views and actually agreeing with the ruling of Griswold v. Connecticut. Pope John XXII created the Pontifical Commission on Birth Control to review the Church's teachings in light of the new developments of birth control methods such as the pill. In 1968, Pope Paul issued Humane Vitae on the regulation of birth control, which reaffirmed the Church's traditional teaching against any sort of birth control. Public opinion had a huge influence on this policy. In 1937, Gallup designed a poll regarding the public's thoughts of birth control. 61% of Americans say that they support a birth control and think that it should be more accessible to prevent unplanned pregnancies. 26% disagreed and did not support birth control, and 13% gave no answer. In the 1930s to 1940s, Gallup asked if people supported government health clinics providing birth control information to married people who sought advice. 71% show that they were in favor of these health clinics, while only 18% disagreed. The public has shown strong majorities that have continued to support birth control. These public opinions helped Griswold and Button to open up their own birth control clinic that would prescribe contraceptives and gave advice even though it was considered against the law in Connecticut. In 1965, during the Griswold v. Connecticut case, 81% believed that it should be legal to supply birth control information to the public. Since the majority held the same opinion, it made it easier for the policy to be implemented quickly without much protest. Mass media was also an important factor in the creation and implementation of this policy. Mass media helped people be more aware and informed about what the issues and controversies were surrounding birth control. Within the FP program, there were many mass media announcements educating women on the advantages of small family norms and the use of contraceptives. When contraceptives actually started becoming open to the public after the ruling of Griswold v. Connecticut, the media played a huge role in getting the word out. Studies have shown that the general exposure to the radio, television, newspaper had very strong positive effects on married couples, especially women. After getting educated about the new marital rights, contraceptive sales quickly increased. Lastly, interest groups were another factor that influenced the creation of this policy. There were many interest groups that actually supported Griswold v. Connecticut. Many attempted to make direct contact with lawmakers and other government officials so they could have their voices heard. There is an interest group called the Complex Family Planning Special Interest Groups, or the CFP-SIG, which is committed to the promotion and support of basic and applied research in contraception. There are also special interest groups, or SIGs, which are communities of practice focused on topics relating to contraception science and clinical care. Members of SIG have opportunities to exchange ideas and speak to the higher-ups about their opinions. These interest groups have helped to reach a decision for Griswold v. Connecticut. Now let's take a look at the cost and benefit analysis. First, let's take a look at the monetary and non-monetary costs of this policy. It costs money for a mass amount of shipping of contraceptives now that they are allowed to be sold in stores. There also needs to be mass production of all types of contraceptives, which will cost a lot of money. Some non-monetary costs of this policy is time. Now that contraceptives are allowed in stores to the public, there needs to be mass production and shipping of these contraceptives to pharmacies. This will take a lot of time before contraceptives become available in local pharmacies. Secondly, let's take a look at the monetary and non-monetary benefits of the policy. Removing the barriers to contraception helps alleviate the cost of contraceptives, and preventing unplanned pregnancies saves taxpayer dollars. 61 million U.S. women of reproductive age use contraceptives, and their average annual savings were $248 for the intrauterine device and $255 for the pill. There are many economic benefits to legalizing birth control to married couples. Research suggests that access to birth control at an earlier age improves economic outcomes for women. For example, it increases in educational attainment and labor force participation. A study found that college enrollment was 20% higher for women who had legal access to contraceptives. Legalizing birth control also results in better outcomes for children. Contraception is linked to improved maternal and child health outcomes by enabling women to plan, delay, and space pregnancies. Last but not least, let's differentiate between perceived costs and benefits and actual costs and benefits. There is a common misconception that birth control can protect someone from STIs. Some women bought birth control for this use. However, birth control does not protect anyone against STIs. A perceived cost is that many people believe that all insurances automatically cover birth control pills. However, in reality, it depends on one's insurance. Depending on their insurance, birth control pills may be free or there may be a copay. Now, it's time to evaluate this policy. The big question is, how effective is this policy? Well, Griswold v. Connecticut was very effective in giving married couples more freedom and privacy, as it allowed access to contraceptives without any government interference telling them what to do. Griswold v. Connecticut also basically paved the road for the reproductive privacy and freedoms that are in place today. Although this policy was very effective in expanding privacy rights, it was also not as effective in preventing unplanned pregnancies. Despite married couples now being allowed access to over-the-counter oral contraceptives, people thought that unintended pregnancies would significantly decrease. However, studies have shown that there was only a 13% reduction in unintended pregnancies, even with full insurance. There have been unintended consequences of this policy. The ruling of Griswold v. Connecticut basically paved the road for reproduction rights and privacy. For example, it led to a later court case in 1972, Eisenstadt v. Baird, which gave the right of single women to use and buy contraceptives. Later in 1973, this case also helped to give the way for Roe v. Wade, which made it so that states could not ban most abortions. Maryland eventually became the first state to have insurance companies cover birth control. A few months later, a national bill was created that required all health insurance plans with prescriptions to cover the pay for 6 birth control methods. This bill did not pass, but many states followed Maryland in enacting their own laws regarding insurance and birth control. These increasing requirements led to heated debates on what the expectations should be provided to those companies and medical professionals who oppose birth control. With the passing of the Affordable Care Act, controversy intensified. Finally, there are some potential reforms to this policy. One reform can be that not just married couples have the right to contraceptives. The policy could be expanded so that single women can also buy contraceptives. Additionally, it can also be made so that minors could potentially have access to birth control too. Here are my works cited pages.